Hello and welcome to another episode of Zwick's Flicks, the Ed Zwick Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, and I have with me returning guest host and online friend, one day meet in real life friend, Craig. How you doing?
Good, Ryan. Ryan, thank you so much. Before we get started, I got a little bit of a surprise for you.
Please.
Because when we talked way back on the last Samurai episode, you were shocked and guffawed to learn a fact about me and Ed Zwick. And I want to tell you that it's been remedied. About a month ago, Target did one of their semi-annual buy two, get one free books, music, DVD sales.
Nice.
So I grabbed the Glory 4K.
Nice. 4K. Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, so I just wanted to let you know that I remedied that issue. Now I can say that I've watched it.
Well, you got to give us your quick Zwick review. What did you think?
I liked it. And I got to say that even knowing all the behind the scenes shit with Matthew Broderick, I thought he turned in a good performance. And I thought his character in the film a perfect amount of time. A lot of the issues his mom had, I didn't seem to find. And that was stuff I was acutely aware of while I was watching it. I knew the behind the scenes history from the episode you and Doug did. And I was looking for it. And I'm like, it's not there.
You could almost argue that Ed Zwick knew what he was doing.
One thing about watching war movies is always seeing how the filmmaker handles war, the realities of war, the horrors of war. The moment where he dies, Robert dies, it wasn't grand. I mean, of course, he's picking up the flag but there's no bravado with the camera work or anything. It's just be shot a couple of times, and that's it. And then almost the last shot is his body just being disposed of like it's nothing. And
that was the idea, though. He was part of the black burial.
Yeah.
He was considered to be black according to the enemy.
There's lots of filmmakers that I don't think would have hit that as hard as Zwick did. That was one of the things watching this movie, man. Good war movies make you understand the sacrifice that people made when they went to war, but then it also just makes you see how pointless it is sometimes. Like, you know,
it is pointless. It's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous what they're doing. The whole thing's ridiculous. I agree.
Yeah, I'm glad you shamed me when we talked. And it's cool that I had it, that I was able to add it to the collection. And in 4K, it looked great. There was
you're making me jealous. I've never seen it in 4K.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about with 4K is like film grain.
Was there any on this?
Yes, there was a nice layer of film grain. It was very nice, and there's some good special features. There's actually
Ed likes his special features.
Yes, it comes with the 4K and the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray just has a regular director's commentary, but the 4K has a video commentary with Zwick, Matthew Broderick, and Morgan Freeman.
Oh, I've seen it. They took that from, you'll see them, they're much younger versions of themselves. When it came out on DVD, they had that just for the DVD version back then. So it's a picture in picture. So you see their faces pop up like a little corner. That's kind of what they did there. But I like it.
Yeah, neat. Yeah. And then also one other note on the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network, we talked about FX probably a year or two ago. One of the bad dudes from FX was in this movie. He was one of the Union soldiers.
Oh, he was the dick that told his soldiers to burn down the town. Yeah. Okay. Yep. What was his name again? Cliff DeYoung or
something like that. Yeah. And he was in a psych rock band in the 60s too.
That's right. I think we talked about
that. But as soon as I saw him, I was like, that's the dude from FX.
Yeah, that's right.
The one thing though is that dude's mustache, it didn't convince me.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
It's funny because you watch like Tombstone, right? You know, the classic Western Tombstone. And one of the famous things about that movie is all the mustaches in that movie were real.
Kurtz was real, yeah. I'm not sure about his mascara, but the mustache was real.
And in Glory, I was like, there were times where you could tell, you're like, yeah, that's not real facial hair. Like, the guy couldn't spend. I mean, I couldn't grow a mustache like that. So, I mean, there's no.
No, I can't either. Mine would be fake. Fake. No, I like hearing your review because I value your opinion. I think you're when it comes to movies, you're very of sound mind. I've done more than my fair share of movies reviews with you. And I very rarely would say, not that I disagree with you. I think we'll have different levels of maybe likes or dislikes regarding films, but very rarely am I like, oof, I don't see what you're seeing. Even if I don't agree with your outlook or your review of a film, you're always well spoken about it. It's well researched. It's like, okay, I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. So speaking of that, do you have anything you want to plug? I know you're Brian De Palma. It's been quiet lately.
No, I took off most of the fall because I just knew I wouldn't be able to commit to it. But starting in 2025. This episode's probably going to drop mid-January. By then, there should be new episodes out. I think the first one's going to be an interview episode that I'm really excited about. And then after that, I think the show's going to go in a little bit of a different direction until I'm able to sort of wrangle some guests again.
You let me know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I'll probably do a couple of solo shows focusing on movies that I think people just don't want to talk about.
So I like the hard assignments. Give me a hard assignment.
There's a channel on YouTube called the De Palma Archives. What they've done, and nobody seems to care about this, is they've put all the Brian De Palma movies that are not readily available to stream or that never hit DVD. The channel's been up for years. It's just one of those things where they're like, hey, we're going to get money anyway. But whoever owns those rights doesn't care. So most of his early pre-Phantom of the Paradise movies, a couple of post Phantom of the Paradise movies are on the archive. So yeah, I'll definitely hit you up because I was
give me a hard one. Give me a hard unknown. I love those type of films. That's what I want.
Well, the funny thing about De Palma is a lot of people credit Martin Scorsese with Robert De Niro's career, but De Niro did some of his earliest works with De Palma.
Good old Bobby D.
That show's easy enough to find if you just search Brian De Palma podcast or The GOAT De Palma.
You have a link tree.
Yes.
What I always do, so folks, I'm going to link under Craig's name or next to his name, the whole link tree. So you just go there, right? And it'll have everything you've done, did, will do. I got to build one myself. It's ridiculous. You've told me to do this too. And
it's fun because then it's a single point of contact.
I know.
Somebody links, and then you can also add stuff that you might not vocally or verbally plug, but it's like, hey,
people
here's
can
this.
Look at it if they want to. Yeah,
here's my my pot roast recipe or whatever.
Sure. I know. I got to work on it. All right. We talk between episodes that we record together because we're friends. We share things, links, whatever we might find. But, we were just touching base to make sure the recording was still good to go for this date and the time. You made a quick comment, which we rarely do. We try to save it for the show. If you're a podcaster, you try to save all comments. You want to react to the person you're podcasting with in real time. You don't want to act it out. You want to have real reactions to their thoughts or feelings. You sent me a comment regarding the film that, I would say, raise a red flag. It raised my eyebrows. I went, oh, okay. And I can't wait to dive into this movie with you regarding that comment. And I won't even say what the comment is because we'll just discuss the film as we always do. We're going to discuss when the film came out. Yeah, some of the big players in the film and what it's about. And of course, our feelings on the film. There will be quote unquote spoilers, all that good stuff. What's kind of sad, I think something that people enjoy when they listen to the show, Craig, and I think my podcast hosts at the least when they've recorded with me, they've enjoyed the audio book from Ed Zwick at the end of the episode. They enjoy it.
Oh, wow. Does he not talk about this in his book?
It's sad because it reflects we got the glory. We got this big talk about Last Samurai and Legends of the Fall. Whole chapter's dedicated. The title of the chapter was literally called Pawn Sacrifice, Jack Reacher 2, Trial by Fire, his last 3 feature films. And that was the name of the chapter. So then I'm listening to the chapter to cut the parts out for the episode that we're going to record today. We're like now 15 minutes into the 25-minute chapter. He hasn't even referenced those 3 films the chapter's titled after.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, that's not good. And then, of course, at the end of this episode, we will play his portion of the Pawn Sacrifice.
Well, it's interesting, and I think there's parallels with De Palma here. Both of them reach points in their careers where I don't know if financing became an issue or their interest in making certain kinds of films changed.
He kind of acknowledged that the films, this came out 2014. So Pawn Sacrifice came out 2014. What was kind of the big films at that time? Really, what was peaking around that time, to be honest with you?
Well, all the Marvel movies, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So he mentioned that, and he wasn't saying anything disparaging like Martin Scorsese did with calling those films not films. We know that famous quote that he did. But Ed basically said, times change, audiences change. He didn't do Legends of the Fall or Glory or Last Samurai type films anymore. Not because he didn't enjoy them, not because they didn't make money, but audiences aren't going to those anymore. They're more flocking to them the way they used to. Look at Kevin Costner's latest Western film. Yeah. I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it. I love Kevin Costner and I love Westerns, but people aren't flocking the way they used to back in the early 90s or the 70s with those type of films. Unfortunately, you have to follow the money. Studios don't put up money where they used to. You're making smaller, intimate films, which Pawn Sacrifice is. Now, the question will be, is it a good film? We'll get into that. I almost cut out what he was talking about regarding where he was in his career at this time, but I didn't, just because I'm trying to just stick to the films we're talking about, not just Ed Zwick as a director, because I want to I want to plug his book. I don't want to put his whole book on YouTube. I recommend people to listen to his book and to hear his thoughts, because it was very engaging what he was saying, where he was at in his career and why he was at in his career. Unfortunately, the films, and I'm hoping these last 3 films, this one, Pawn Sacrifice, Jack Reacher 2, and of course Trial by Fire, the last 3 films of his feature films that we'll be talking about, isn't a reflection of, I wouldn't say downward spiral is not the right word, but I hope it's not.
That this movie, we talk about budgets, but while watching it, I was like, what was the music licensing budget on this? Because they used tons of period specific, well-known music. That had to be hundreds of thousands of dollars of the budget.
Right. Have you heard of prices?
I'd imagine the licensing rights for White Rabbit have to be pretty high.
Sure.
I would estimate the music budget for this had to be in the probably $500,000, maybe.
Well, the budget of the film was $19 million.
That's still a healthy budget to work with.
It's a healthy budget. Pawn Sacrifice is a 2014 American biographical psychological drama film about Bobby Fischer. Now, most of our listeners should know who Bobby Fischer is, but if you don't, Bobby Fischer this is a true story again, was a chess grandmaster and the 11th world champion. It follows Fischer's challenge against top Soviet chess grandmasters during the Cold War, and culminating in the film, the World Chess Championship of 1972, where he played Boris Spassky. I was very intrigued, and actually, I would say I was excited to see the film because it's about chess. Chess is not, generally speaking, it's not really an engaging topic, unless you're chess. Look, I suspect if you like chess, you probably would really like this film. I know how to play chess. Do you know how to play chess?
I used to. It was funny when I was watching this movie. I remember like the way that each piece is able to move, but I didn't really remember a lot of the strategy behind it. And I was never a good chess player by any stretch.
I know how to play. Like I actually know how to play. I suck at it, but half of chess is just knowing what you're allowed to do and what the consequences of your moves are. So the term pawn sacrifice, did you guess what that might mean in the world of chess?
Well, yeah, you're giving up a weaker piece to advance your position and potentially get a bigger reward.
Sacrifice is to give up something for something greater. And so you're sacrificing your pawn for a greater move. Now, I know how to play chess, but I don't know the grids. But we see throughout the film, they talk about the grids, whatever it is, G5 to RD4, whatever it is. But I recognize those represent the squares. And so the idea that chess can be played verbally was kind of a fascinating thing to see.
He was prepping with Skarsgård, and there's a great moment where Peter Skarsgård, he's not part of the Skarsgård family, but he's got that name.
Sarsgaard,
yeah. He's talking about like how there's a certain amount of opening moves. After those opening moves, there's more potential moves than there are stars in the galaxy or something.
Because there are only so many pieces, and there are only so many ways the pieces can move. And that's the hardest part about chess when I played it when I was younger, was those first couple moves is like, do you move the pawn here or that pawn there, or do you jump over with the knight? But these guys are so good. They play against themselves, Craig. That's how they.
Oh, yeah.
So that's weird to me.
Another like outrageous moment in the movie, and I didn't compare this to the real life games, but in 2 of the games, Fischer does an opening move he had never done before.
Right.
And it throws the Russians for a complete loop because they're like, wow, all the prep work we did. You can pontificate.
They study the tapes.
Yeah, exactly. But you can say, oh, he did this move. This is how the game goes from there. I guess it's like plotting out a course on a map. Like you can pontificate based on an opening move.
Well, I guess it's just like any sport. I mean, there was Worldwide Sports was actually covering these games, even though it's not the sport. It's a sport of a mind. It's not a physical sport. But I guess sport just means that sport is a competition.
Yeah, and I got to say that as good of a job as they did trying to keep the viewer sort of aware of what was going on, I think you still needed to have a pretty solid grasp of the game in order to understand it.
Well, that's what I mean. I know the game well enough that I was never lost. I played a lot as a kid. I wasn't part of the chess club, but right now I can play the game. I don't need to be reminded of the rules. I used to think chess was a common knowledge. I thought everyone knew how to play chess. It's kind of like everyone knows how to play Go Fish, right? So I thought that, but I guess not everyone knows how to play. And the problem with this film, so I agree with you. So the problem with this film is the subject matter is such that the game is a big part of the movie. It is a true story. We're going to get into the actors and the characters they played. So we'll talk about those characters and some of their developments in the film. But the chess is the playground metaphorically that this whole movie plays on is the chess game and understanding it. So one thing I didn't ever consider was, like I said before, was you're able to practice chess verbally. Then that's a fascinating aspect because you can't practice hockey verbally. In the sense you can talk about the game, saying, hey, next time next time Buddy comes on the ice and he's going to do XYZ, make sure you come out. That's what the coaches do on the bench. They talk, strategy with the guys, but that can't be your whole practice. But chess has this fascinating ability where you can do a lot just by talking. It's amazing that you can formulate these plans just by walking down the street together.
My biggest problem with this movie is it ends with probably a 3 to 5 minute recap of Bobby Fischer's life after the match in 72. And the whole time I'm watching that, and I sort of remember his reemergence. I was old enough to remember it. I lived in the New York area at the time. But the whole time I'm watching that, I'm like, this is the movie that Zwick should have made. That was the meteor story to me. A guy, sort of reemerging from a self-imposed semi-forced whatever seclusion, and he's lost his mind. Man, that's the movie I wanted to watch. The other problem I have with this movie is Fischer's not a likable character, and that's the hardest thing to do. I mean, you can make movie about challenging people. I don't know if it just wasn't framed correctly because he felt like he wasn't financed as well as the Russians, and it was kind of like the underdog versus the superpower. But he came off as whiny and unlikable. And for me, if I can't connect at all with the character, it's just really hard for me to really care.
No, you're absolutely right. You can make a film about unlikable characters. I didn't come prepared to give examples of such a film. I'm just trying to think of one at the top of my head where somebody is quote unquote unlikable, but it's an engaging story. Here's the thing, like you, I didn't know Bobby Fischer. I didn't know him. I knew that he was a chess prodigy, that he played this game at the level that he did. So I did learn things. And like you, I agree. They should have started the film with the final match. Now, imagine if that was the beginning of the film. So right away, you're already there with Bobby Fischer winning the championship against Basquiat. So that's the beginning. And then we see, because you're right, the whole epilogue at the end of the film with the real footage, with him escaping, being like the U.S. was arresting him for playing the illegal chess, having these passports. Now, granted, we see in the film he's listening to conspiracy tapes. Like he's basically on X in the film. Like listening to all these Alex Jones type tapes of Jewish people. They're controlling the banks. It's all in the movie. And he is Jewish, which is the juxtaposition. So that's what's fascinating. But he's listening to how there's Israeli Jews versus the American Jews and all this. So we're getting that subplot throughout the film, that's the engaging part, is that we see a guy who's paranoid, who thinks this and that about the governments, and then he goes kind of insane, like that guy in the 1800s went insane. So we'd have this, you could almost have it like a even more engaging film. You could almost go flashback to the other guy. Remember they
do like a parallel story, like Godfather 2 or something. Yeah,
that's right. Almost have like this guy went insane with his chess genius because he had voices in his head, but he's a genius. And then see the parallels with Bobby Fischer kind of going insane the same way this other guy went insane, who was at the time the Bobby Fischer of his time in the late 1800s.
Yeah,
that would have been an interesting film, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's my biggest issue with this film is there's just like there's several different ways to open a chess match. Yeah, there's several different paths this movie could have taken, and you think about the potential moves that the movie could have made, and you get disappointed.
It's weird that two schlubs like us could come up with a better story. And I honestly think I would challenge anyone who has seen the film, hears our criticism, would disagree. I hate but I would die by that sword theory, metaphorically speaking. That the majority of the people who heard this criticism would disagree. Like, no, that's not a more engaging, him going on the run and exile and all that stuff, because that's a fascinating piece of history. Where he's going batty. It's like A Beautiful Mind, right? That film there.
That was a parallel I thought about. I thought of that movie, and I was like, Yeah.
Someone who's maybe not that likable, but who's a genius. So you admire the genius. And that's where I did admire Bobby Fischer's genius, his ability. And so I was rooting for him in the sense that not that I wanted Basky to lose because he's Russian. In fact, Basky, the character portrayed in the film, seemed like a very likable, easygoing personality. I liked his personality. But even he showed signs of his genius making him paranoid, which I liked too. That I don't know if Bobby was rubbing off on Basky, but there's that. Remember, he's looking at his chair. His chair might have listening devices. He had his chair X-rayed.
Yeah. Basky, I think, has said, at least on Wikipedia, said that he didn't approve of the portrayal of himself in this. He said that his main gripe was the way they presented him agreeing to continue the match with Fischer was not accurate to why he actually made the decision in real life. And he didn't go into any detail about it, but he said it wasn't presented in the movie in an accurate way. So I don't know.
Interesting enough, both Basky and Bobby remained cordial and friendly their whole life. There was no animosity between them. And that was
still alive. Yeah.
He's still alive. Oh, okay.
Yeah. 1937 he was born. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow, good for him. So he's still kicking around. Okay. So
and he and in the early 2000s he was beat by a teenage girl.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
So the other, so I agree with the problem with this film, and though it did what it was supposed to do, portray Bobby in an unflattering light, which is fine. It's okay that you're that character, but I guess maybe because I didn't know that's what Bobby was like, I was thrown off. Like, I don't like this guy. And so now I'm kind of watching the film about a person I don't really care about. Like, I don't relate to him. Chess isn't that engaging for me. But then the movie did, like we said, ends with this epilogue. Well, there you go. There's your story. And so his childhood and his whole relationship with his mother wasn't really fleshed out. I didn't understand why see his family and his sister when all we get out of that is that they cheer for him in the end final game. Like, wow, great. They were still watching their brother and son play the game at the end. It was silly, and him being paranoid, looking at stuff in the phones and the wall. It's been done before. Again, start the film that way. Start it that way. The way it almost did. It actually started with him looking at the phones and tearing up his hotel room. Then it goes back, and then we get there later. 3/4 way through the film, back to that. The opening shot of the film was him being paranoid. They should have stuck with that. They should have just landed us as an audience right in the middle of that action. And then see the exile, the states wanting to arrest him and why, and him going to Iceland and dying there, and him and Bosky playing. It could be a Hollywood trope, but you could have them playing like a private match with no audience, where it's just a private match. We don't know who the winner is, and the film cuts. Something like that. Yeah, I don't know. What do I know?
Obviously, they made the movie they wanted to make.
Right. They did. Okay, so let's talk about the cast.
For me, this movie was really, really sort of made by the supporting cast. Okay. There were some great supporting players here.
Well, guy that played Carmine Nigro, he's a real life person. He was the person that kind of trained. He was like the Mickey, so to speak, to Bobby Fischer when he was a kid. He was the one that beat Bobby at the beginning, but then Bobby came back, played, and we see a little montage of them growing together and training him to become a better chess player. So he was a real person. That was a real person within the film. That's a real life person. He was played by a guy named Conrad Pla. I don't recognize him for anything else, but he's been in a lot of stuff. If you look at his credentials, he's been acting in television up to 2022 and film up to 2018. So he's busy actor in his own right. Spanish Canadian, yeah. Formerly a professional kickboxer.
Yeah, he didn't seem to me like he was the kind of guy that would kick ass and take names, but here we are.
Yeah, he had 26 pro fights. He was ranked 3rd in the world at one time. Good for him.
I wonder if Jake Paul has his name on a list of people he can fight.
Yeah, Jake. He's not old enough. He's got to get a little bit older, I think. All right, now this next actress I did recognize. Did you ever see Deadwood?
I watched the first season of Deadwood. I never committed enough to it, but yeah.
Oh, I love Deadwood. It's such a great. I mean, as you know, I'm a huge Western guy, and Deadwood was just like, it's such a good Western show. She played on that show Calamity Jane. Okay, so that's the same actress that played Bobby's mother in this film. So I recognized her right away. She always looks so different because in Calamity Jane, she's really undolled up, like she looks terrible, so to speak. But again, kind of a thankless role.
We sort of see his upbringing and things like that, and it seems like the film tried to paint it like it had a way more of an impact on his mental health than we probably think.
Yeah, because he says in one scene when he's a boy, like, "Where's my father? Who is he?" Like, you're just schlubbing all these other guys. Where's my father? And we never get the answer, or it's never really. You're like, "Welcome to the club, kid. You're one of the millions of kids who didn't have a dad growing up," so to speak. She seems like a decent enough mom, but she just, I guess, like, sleeping around, and she's part of some sort of communist club or something. Other than that, I don't know. Like, did you get anything that he was mistreated anyway, or?
Not really. I mean, it was just that was the first indication that he was kind of a jerk.
Yeah. He told her. Didn't he curse at her or something?
Yeah, and actually, that kid had probably the best accent in the movie.
The kid that played young Bobby Fischer did a great job. Yeah, I thought he actually did a great job.
Well, there were two of them.
Yeah, there was two of them. That's right. You're right. It actually threw me off when he grew up a little bit. They got two actors that look very similar. It threw me off. I was like, wow, is this one of those? Was that directed the film, that movie Boy or whatever it was, Life of a Boy or what was it?
Oh yeah, Richard Linklater. Yeah,
that's. I haven't seen that film. Have you?
No. Yeah, I like him as a filmmaker, but I haven't seen it.
I don't know why it doesn't interest me. It should interest me. It's an interesting experiment for our listeners. It's somebody he directed a film like in 10 or 12 years. Like, it took 10 years to film it because he was filming as the boy was aging. It's an interesting experiment.
Yeah. Well, you better make sure you have your blocking, because you can't go back and reshoot something.
That's right. Okay. Now, this next guy, he had a big role in the film. He looked semi-familiar. His name is Michael Stuhlbarg. Do you recognize him for anything that you saw? I had to look him up.
Yeah, I think he was in one of the Men in Black movies, but he also did a Coen Brothers movie that is probably not a well-known Coen Brothers movie, but called The Serious Man.
He was the main actor in that?
Yeah.
That's where I saw him. Okay. Yeah, I've seen that film. I've seen every Coen film, brother. Okay.
Tremendous film. It's probably in my top 5 favorite Coen Brothers movies.
Oh, wow. Okay. I don't think it's in my top 5, but yeah, I mean, a Coen Brothers film is a Coen Brothers film. It's never a bad watch, but yeah, interesting. Okay, that was him. Okay, my brain was tickling. Like, you've seen him before. Where is he? Men in Black 3. I mean, I've seen the film, but so in recent films, I'm just trying to see here. Nothing that I would have seen him recently. So, but again, he's one of those people. He's always in film. He's got 2 being filmed right now. He's been in television. Oh, okay. He was in Boardwalk Empire, which I watched the whole thing. He had a main role in that. That's where I saw him then. He played Arnold Rothstein in that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He's a great actor. The movie is really elevated by the supporting cast.
Yeah, agreed. So he was part of that support. Now we're getting to the actors where I didn't have to, or I wouldn't have to look them up who they are. So Peter Sarsgaard, we mentioned him. He played a real life person that was part of this individual has his own Wikipedia page. He was also an American chess grandmaster, chess writer, teacher, and a former Catholic priest. And I guess during the events of this film, he was still a Catholic priest, because they really made you know that he's walking around wearing the garb throughout the whole film, which is almost like a superhero costume throughout the film to remind the audience this is a Catholic priest. What did you think of Peter Sarsgaard, both as an actor and his time on this film?
Again, I think he elevates this film. I think he's a good sort of meat and potato supporting actor. The one thing I'll say is his character really was sort of every movie sort of has this, right? The character that the audience is going to sort of get a lot of their information from.
Yeah, that's
so. I think he was tasked with conveying a lot of the exposition or the information the audience needed to know. So he was the voice of the audience. He'd point out the chess moves to sort of help us understand what was going on there. So
yes. And I found that fascinating at the end. So for our listeners, if you haven't seen the movie, when they had the big final chess match at the end, like Craig was saying, Peter Sarsgaard, his character, what's his character's name? My apologies. William Lombardi was the real life person. So he he was kind of like the Bobby whisperer. So when Bobby was having a really hard go or, freaking out, the Catholic priest played by Peter would come in and talk to him off a ledge. And he was kind of like the soft voice for Bobby, even at times telling him cold hard truths or like, hey, snap out of it. What are you doing? So he was like the go between the sponsors and Bobby type thing. So that's kind of how I took him. But he himself was a very prolific and good in real life chess player. And so when we get to the final matches, we as the audience, because chess, there's no talking. Like when the opponents are playing, they're not yapping at each other. There's no bickering. There's no arguments or discussions. Like, oh, what the hell are you doing that move for? Like, you don't. It's. I guess it's part of the rules. You don't talk to each other. It's all just moves, and so we don't know what's really kind of happening, right? We don't know what the thoughts are. So we cut to both the Russian teams and the American teams have people with their own chessboards, and they will move their pieces the same way that their players have moved their pieces, so we can see the game inside, like what's their thought process. This is what they're doing. Oh, I see what he's doing. So this is the dramas. We're like, oh, he's doing it. I can't believe he's doing the move. What's he doing? It's suicide. Oh, I can't. It's all this talk about a chess game, but that's what it does. You're right. So all this, me saying all this, is saying that we as the audience, we can now hear the thought process that Bobby is doing or how we should respond to these moves that the audience can't talk out loud because it's rude to talk during the game, but then they get to do it for us about behind the wall there.
Yep.
So Peter Sarsgaard, he's another actor. I've mentioned this numerous times doing this podcast. He's an actor where I've never gone to see, hey, Peter Sarsgaard's got a new film coming out, I can't wait to see it. However, when he shows up, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy, he's a good guy, he's a good actor. Every time I see him, he just seems to do just fine as an actor, and I think that's not a bad place to be. So what are your thoughts on, do you have any like fandom with him, or do you kind of feel the same way? Like I've seen tons of his, like if you look at his filmography, you've seen a lot of his films.
Yeah. And I've got to think that it's probably better career-wise to be him, because you're never going to be expected to carry a movie. You're never going to be expected to open a movie.
Yeah.
You're going to do a lot of behind the scenes, or at least, non-obvious heavy lifting character work. But I think that keeps you employed. My first real recollection is probably like Garden State, maybe.
Yeah.
He played the gravedigger friend that Zach Braff sort of reconnects with when he goes back to Jersey or whatever. And he's kind of not a great person or whatever. He played that role well. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have to go to bed at night worried whether or not Pawn Sacrifice is going to open big enough to make the investors happy.
No, I've said it before in other episodes, whether it's this show or other ones, where that's the career I'd want to have. Because you still go to the supermarket or Disneyland with your family. You might have people say, "Hey, you're that guy," or "I've seen." Yeah. That's okay. I would say something to the effect, "If you can tell me what movie I've been in, I'll give you an autograph." But no, you're just that guy. I'm like, that's perfect. I'm just that guy. For example, you're talking about Green Lantern that came out in 2011. Was that movie a box office and critic success or no?
No. Did he play Brainiac?
He played Dr. Hector Hammond. Yeah, Brainiac. Okay. So that's what I mean. Nobody is on his case regarding Green Lantern. Who are they on?
Ryan Reynolds. Yeah,
exactly. So if a movie fails, no one's going, "Oh, Peter Sarsgaard, you're in that movie bombed because of you." Another one that he was in, Night and Day.
Mm-hmm. I like that movie.
It was a fun movie, but was it a box office success? Like, was it I don't think it was a bomb, but for a Tom Cruise film, it wasn't, it wasn't a huge film. So again, that's another example of no one saw that film and blamed or criticized Peter. They would have thrown their ire at Cameron Diaz or Tom Cruise, right?
Yeah.
So it's a great place to be, where you're just like, I'm working. I got a job and I got a next film. And he's got another film right now that he's filming, and it's probably not going to ride on his shoulders either. No, actually, speaking of which, as I say this, guess who is writing and directing and starring in that film? Maggie Gyllenhaal. Now, why do I say that? Because that's his wife.
Oh, okay. Wow. I didn't realize that they were a couple.
They've been married for quite some time. So his wife is writing, directing, producing the film. So Maggie Gyllenhaal they've been married now for 15 years. So his brother is Jake. ... Jake starred in the previous film to this one with Love and Other Drugs, directed by Ed Zwick.
Oh.
I wonder if there's some sort of connections there where it's like, because you can imagine Jake's on the film set with Ed Zwick. Maggie probably comes over to visit the set. Peter probably goes with Maggie to film or to see or the premiere, you know. And Ed's like, hey, I got another film you might be interested in. There's probably a little bit of that. Jake probably had a good time with Ed. And so Peter's like, yeah, I'll go do a film with Ed. But yeah, so not much more to say about Peter. He was the voice of reason, both for Bobby and for the audience. We like Peter Sarsgaard's character, and we appreciate him, as one would with a Catholic priest. All right, so the next credited person I recognize by face, but I did look her up because like, oh man, she looks so familiar. Her name is Lily Rabe, if I'm saying her name right. She plays Joan Fisher. That's Bobby's, of course, sister. It's weird that she's credited third in the credits. I thought that was weird because according to the Wikipedia listing, which is usually pretty close to the credits that they do in the films, because Michael Stolberg, who plays that guy that goes with Bobby, he's the one that's kind of the lawyer type person or the business side of the house. He's in the film a lot, but it's just weird that his sister's third credit.
And this is when you get into the business end of the movie business. There's probably all kinds of, like, oh, we'll take this level of pay, but we need this, this credit or whatever, or this level. Who knows?
Who knows? No, I hear you. And she was good. I mean, she's fine, but odd again, underutilized. Not really sure. Great, you have a sister. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
what there were maybe 3 scenes together.
Well, the big scene was her saying, like, talking again to Paul Marshall, played by Michael Stolberg, at the restaurant, where she's like, "I'm getting these letters from he's my brother. Take care of him." At first, I was like, "Is that the mother?" I was like, "Oh, that's the sister."
No, absolutely, yeah.
I'm like, I was so confused. Oh, that's the sister. Anyways, so her name is Lily Rabe. The reason why I know her, because I'm a big fan of this TV series, she played recurring characters on seasons of American Horror Story.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you know her from anything else or same thing?
I didn't know her from anything in particular. I'd like to say that I knew her from the theatrical version of the Merchant of Venice, but I did not.
Yeah, so she's been in a lot of stuff, but I've watched every season of American Horror Story, and she's been in the majority, like 70 episodes. So that's where I saw her face. Like, oh, that's where I've seen her. Of course, she's another Gyllenhaal connection. She actually plays in 4 episodes of the miniseries Presumed Innocent, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. It's based on the novel that Harrison Ford starred in the same film.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, they just flushed it out for a miniseries on Apple TV with Jake. It's on my to watch list because I actually really like Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he's a great actor.
Yeah, I dig him. Yeah. I love Donnie Darko, of course.
Yeah.
He did another great movie called Nightcrawler. Have you ever seen Nightcrawler?
Not yet. I know. I've heard it's good.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it's like a paparazzi type film.
Yes.
Man, you have to watch Nightcrawler like immediately if you're Jake Gyllenhaal fan.
I know. I thought you could say he did another great film, Roadhouse. Did you watch Roadhouse?
No, I couldn't bring myself to watch it.
Okay, I allow myself just to enjoy a film just because, like, I know it has the title Roadhouse. I know the original with Patrick Swayze is beloved. I get all that stuff, but if you have the power to do so, to watch the film and pretend that the original Roadhouse never existed, like, just don't compare it. It's not even a remake. It's just a reimagining. It just takes the same idea. They shouldn't even call it Roadhouse. It's a fun. I enjoy it.
And they do that. They do that because they know that whatever percentage of the viewership will increase because of the connection to.
I get it.
Then I still don't understand like the economics of it. I think Gyllenhaal and Doug Liman, director, were pissed because it didn't go to theaters at all, and they thought it was. Really? So like, I just always wonder about streaming. And I know sort of in our group chat with the network, Sean Malloy always talks about how are these movies benefiting anyone unless they're doing theatrical openings overseas, and that's where they're making their money from.
Doug Liman, right after The Roadhouse, another film I haven't seen yet, but he had 2 films in 2024 go straight to streaming. The other one was The Instigators with Matt Damon and Casey Affleck.
Okay. Yeah.
So there must be money in streaming.
Yeah, I don't know if these movies are opening overseas and they're doing enough money overseas to justify it, or if there's some kind of tax write-off, component. I don't know. Doug Liman's another interesting director, though. That's a dude who his career did not.
We could do a mini series on him.
His career did not go the way I thought it would. He started
Swingers. Was the second film. That was the second film. His first film was Getting In.
Yeah, Swingers kind of put him on the map.
Yes, put him on the map.
And then he followed it up, I think, with Go.
That's right.
Which is like one of those Tarantino sort of inspired, that Tarantino boom. But he did like Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Before that, he did The Bourne Identity.
Yeah, that was the trend where it's like, oh, let's take a hot indie director and make a big budget action film. But then didn't he also do Night and Day?
No.
Who did Night and Day?
Oh, who did that? It's a director I know too. We'll get back to that. I love this. I love these discussions. This is what I love about this miniseries. So he did a Jumper.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Jumper. That was kind of a lot of people like Jumper. I haven't seen it, but I know in the online talk of the films, people kind of get a kick out of Jumper. Did you like it?
Yeah, I also read the book. It was based on. No, it was cool, and Hayden Christensen was perfect for that movie, and he's also able to play really unlikable characters. To be something he's sort of leaned into a little bit. No, but yeah, Doug Liman is
his best. You're forgetting his best film, Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh yeah, the Tom Cruise.
That's a great film. That's legit good film. That's an underrated.
Well, I think of it as Live, Die, Repeat.
It's called Edge of Tomorrow, but it was originally called Live, Die, Repeat. Yes.
Yeah.
And they kept it for the film tagline though.
Yeah, I also think when it came out on home video, that was very prominent. Yeah, that's a good movie.
James Mangold directed Night and Day. That's right.
Oh, okay, yeah. Who just did the Bob Dylan movie that just came out?
I was going to say the Indiana Jones film too.
Yeah, and he did Logan. James Mangold is another one because he made Copland.
Copland. Well, you know what? Here's the funny thing. The fact, this is actually very interesting that we're doing this, and this is actually, I'm not just saying this. When I wanted to do a director, it was the idea of it was not every film this director is well known. Ed Zwick's good, but we could talk about his, like, People Know Glory, Legends of the Fall. That's what I mean. There's films that are like, oh, he did those films, and that's exactly what we're doing with these other directors. Is like, oh, he did that film, but they're films that people know, and I didn't want to do a Steven Spielberg, Christopher Nolan. Yeah. We get it. No offense to one of my guest hosts, Quentin Tarantino. Because these are films that we get it. They're Quentin. Everyone loves Quentin. Everyone, or they have a huge fan base. We don't have to sing their accolades so much anymore.
Yeah.
I wanted to get these sort of like, oh, that guy did that film. It's almost like it's like this Peter Sarsgaard of directors. Oh, that director, So like very few people go to a film because Ed Zwick's in it. They're not going because he's in it, but they're like, oh, he's directing it. It might be good. And so far, maybe this film was his first real hiccup. I've really enjoyed his films. This might be the first one. So I say all that, Craig, because funny enough, I'm looking at James Mangold. I'm looking at Doug Liman. I kind of agree with you. These are other directors that have like it's not like 30 films. I could do another miniseries, but okay. So back to the actress, because now we're on Liev Schreiber, as pronounced by, we found out later. I don't know if you heard the episode that I did with Scott on Defiance. Did you hear that episode yet?
I haven't listened yet.
Okay.
It's Liev though, isn't it?
That's right. It's Liev. Yeah. I always pronounce it Liv or Live or whatever, but when I heard the audiobook and I heard Ed Zwick pronounce it Liev, I'm like, oh, I have been corrected. So, so Liev Schreiber. I already said all I had to say about Liev on my Defiance episode with Scott, so I won't repeat myself as an actor, but I want to hear your thoughts on him as an actor.
Did you mention that he played Chuck Wepner?
It's funny. I didn't mention that.
Yeah. Yeah, he played Chuck Wepner. I like Liev Schreiber. He's had an interesting career as well. He played Sabretooth in some of the X-Men movies, which I thought was funny.
But he wasn't in the latest one, which was disappointing.
Are you talking about Deadpool and Wolverine?
Yeah, they used the other Sabretooth for that scene.
I don't even think that was Tyler Mane, though. I think
it was.
Was it?
Yes.
Because the Toad guy, they didn't get Ray Park for Toad. They didn't get the dude that played Juggernaut. So it's weird. Deadpool and Wolverine, they were like, we'll get lookalikes. But either way, the thing about Liev Schreiber for me is he's such a sensitive actor. Mm-hmm. And it was just always weird that he played Sabretooth and then also Chuck Wepner. But I think his biggest strength is always sort of that sensitivity. And God, I'm just thinking back now, he was in Scream And Scream 2, he was Cotton Weary. He was the guy that was originally accused of killing Sydney's mom.
That's right. That's a great poll, Craig. Thank you for that.
It just popped in my head.
Yeah, all the films we didn't mention, but this is great. That's why I like your thoughts.
No, I've always liked him, and again, he is of great benefit to this movie. His role, it's very subdued. It's a quiet performance, but there's that whole sequence where he's in his apartment or he's in his hotel room and he knows that he's being listened to. Yeah. So he's talking to all of his handlers in Russian. And it sounded like a good, authentic Russian accent to me.
Okay. The fact that you're bringing up, that's why I asked if you listened to the Defiance episode, and I'm shame on you for not listening to it yet. I hope you do.
It's only been out for what, like less than 2 weeks?
How dare you? You listen right away when you see that episode drop. I need those numbers, Craig. I need them. I'm counting on you. You and Kate and Doug, you're my top list. I always look forward to your guys' comments because I'm like, oh, good, they like it. Okay. But during that episode, we didn't mention Ed on his audio version of that film. He had a lot to say on that film. So I'll save it for your listen and for my audience to go back and listen. But you mentioned the Russian dialogue or dialect. It's cool that you caught that on your own, actually, because Ed mentioned that when Liev did the Russian talking with the other authentic Russian actors, I think there's other authentic Russian actors with him. Yeah. They thought he spoke Russian. They thought he was Russian.
They thought they could get conversational with him.
He was that good at it. They thought, oh, he speaks Russian. We mentioned too in that episode. We figured that Liev seems like he's highly intelligent as a person. Like if you were to measure his IQ, he just seems like he might be a smart guy.
Absolutely. Okay. And I also think that's a sign of a committed actor. Mm-hmm. You know, that a lot of actors would be like, it's good enough, or the dialect coach would be like, it's good enough.
Right.
But it seems like he's the type of guy that puts in that extra couple of hours by himself.
I agree.
You know, and I always admire that. It's not something that I don't notice and don't appreciate.
Yeah. So again, check out that episode, folks, if you want to hear more about our discussion about Liev Schreiber. I want to hear Craig's thoughts on it. I'm not surprised you feel that way about him. Solid actor, great actor. And I know I need to see Ray Donovan. I heard it's a good show.
Yeah, you know what? That was a Showtime show, right? Yeah, I'll have to watch that too, because we have the Paramount Plus with Showtime.
Yeah. I've heard good things about that show. I don't know why, but he reminds me of like the alpha male version of Tom Hanks.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
He just seems like a meteor. The guy's a big dude. Like I think he's like 6'3".
Well, yeah. Like I mean, he was able to play Chuck Wepner. So I mean, like,
yeah. So yeah, he's 57 now, if you can believe it. But yeah, great guy, great actor. He was. I think I said it for him that he's one of those actors where I don't think I've ever gone to see a Liev Schreiber movie, but when he's in it, you're like, oh, he's a great actor. I'm glad he's here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Drum roll, please. We're not going to talk about the star who played Bobby Fischer himself. We have yet to talk about him on our podcast, the Ed Zwick podcast. Tobey Maguire. He is actually my age. I think we're both born in 75. Yeah, he's about just a few months older than me. We all know who Tobey Maguire is. So the question now is, did he play a good Bobby Fischer so well that you found yourself being irritated by Tobey Maguire? Because that's kind of how I felt. I was like, boy, he's doing a good job. Or is his acting annoying? Or is Bobby Fischer annoying? Or all the above? What's your overall thoughts about Tobey Maguire as Bobby Fischer?
You made some interesting points in the run-up there. But for me, Tobey Maguire is the weak link in this film.
Sure.
At the end of the film, when they show the real Bobby Fischer, you hear his voice and you say, okay, that's what Tobey was trying to do. But Tobey's got this problem that a lot of actors have and a lot of films sort of have. I think a famous example would be like The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves. They do a voice, but the voice is not consistent throughout the film. Either do the voice or don't. I don't think you need to sound like Bobby Fischer to do the Bobby Fischer movie. And getting back to James Mangold, if you look at the Johnny Cash movie he made, Walk the Line.
Right.
Joaquin Phoenix doesn't look like Johnny Cash. He doesn't sound like Johnny Cash.
Right.
But in that movie, he was Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with Tobey Maguire's performance here is he seems to try and mimic too much. And for me, it always seemed like a performance that was inauthentic.
Don't disagree with the weakest link comment, and your reasoning is sound. In fact, I think it was in the film. I think we're about 2/3 of the way through the film. He's walking down that gravel road when his handler, and I think it was just the handler guy, comes up to him and says, "Hey, they've accepted your offer, whatever it is, to play in the room, the ping pong room, or whatever." And he turns around to walk back instead of going to the car. It was actually at that moment when I was like, "Is Tobey Maguire a good actor? I don't know." And I felt bad because I'm sure he's a sweetheart of a guy. This has nothing to do with him as a personality. I don't think he has any real scandals in his life. I don't think he's a bad person. I don't know. I don't know enough. Like, I don't follow the tabloids on everybody. But the point is, it didn't even dawn on me because I don't watch Tobey Maguire films. I've seen a lot of them. I've seen The Ice Storm. I know you've seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but I don't think he had a big role in that. Of course, Pleasantville was a big one. I think it was one of his bigger films was Pleasantville. But I probably saw it because of Reese Witherspoon. The Cider House Rules he was in, Riot with the Devil he was in. I've seen those. Of course, Wonder Boys I've seen. So there's a big span there. He's in these big, very, I want to say artsy films. That's the right word, but just like drama films, like Oscar-worthy type films. He was in Seabiscuit. Of course, we all know he was the Spider-Man. Now, I will say, here's my good things to say about him. I think he's a great Peter Parker. I think he did a great job. Yeah. Okay. So I think he nails Peter Parker and the Spider-Man character. In fact, when I saw Spider-Man No Way Home, and of course they had that multiverse with the Spider-Man, I thought all three guys did a great job. It just goes to show you that many actors can play the same role. And I like that idea that you don't have to have a favorite necessarily. Just like there's more than one Batman, there's more than one Spider-Man, more than one Superman. The character is too important in my books. Well, whoever that character with Joker is the same thing. I like all the different versions because the character is too important not to tell stories about on the big screen just because a certain actor nailed it. Like, I want to see more Superman films. I want to see more Batman films because I like the character. I read comic books all the time as a teenager, and I knew what a different artist would draw in my comic book. I knew, oh, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. So I knew the styling was different, but I didn't care. I even had ones I didn't like as much as others, but I liked the character too much to not read about the story. Okay. Mm-hmm. The point is, it just dawned on me on this film, watching Tobey Maguire outside of the Spidey suit, I don't know if he's a great actor. I don't know. I think he's been in good films. I think he's had good directors. I think this is a situation where I don't know if he's a great actor because he did not save this film. He was the weakest link. Here's a movie about Bobby Fischer, and Tobey's performance is the problem. I hate that I feel that way.
Yeah, again, I think it's the point where it's the mimic, the attempt to mimic. And sure. You mentioned Fear and Loathing, and I know that you haven't seen that movie and you're not really interested in it, but Johnny Depp, he was Hunter S. Thompson in that movie.
Right.
He spent a couple of weeks living with Hunter in Colorado and Aspen. And there's no point in that movie where you watch Depp's performance and say, oh, this is mimicry. It was right. Johnny Depp was Hunter S. Thompson. Whereas in this movie, it always seemed like you could sort of see the seam in the performance. It was mostly based on the fact that he tried to do that accent that I don't think he needed to do.
Hot take. Johnny Depp's a really good actor. He is. He's a really good actor. Whether he's playing Captain Pirates of the Caribbean, Captain was Jack Sparrow, Jack Sparrow, yeah. Like he's fun. He's a great Jack Sparrow. And then when he's playing the Donnie Brasco, they're like, he's so good. Edward Scissorhands. Let me go on and on. Johnny Depp is a great actor. He can actually act and be different characters. And that's what I'm getting at. Is Tobey Maguire a good actor? Johnny Depp is. Not every athlete's Michael Jordan. I think we sometimes forget that just because you're in Hollywood doesn't mean you're at the same level as other actors or actresses. Just because you're in the NBA, not everyone's LeBron James. There are levels of ability. Acting is no different. I think Tobey Maguire is a bit of a bench warmer, and I hate to say it. I think he had a great time and a great job as playing Peter Parker. I think he nailed it. I think it was just the right look at the right time with the right director with Sam Raimi. But I don't know outside of that if I can name any real true Tobey Maguire performance. Like, oh, there you go. I've talked about Leonardo DiCaprio, for example, in this, Brad Pitt. It's other actors I've talked about on this podcast where I'm like, yeah, these are roles like Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't think I could name you 5 bad films he's been in. I don't know what he's done bad. He's He's good at what he does. When you watch his films, like, boy, that guy can act, So I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts overall on Tobey, I guess, before we close that chapter? Just, am I wrong? Am I going crazy here? Or
No, you're not. You're not. At some point, Zwick, I mean, I think it ultimately falls on him. I wish he had pulled Tobey aside during rehearsals before they filmed and said, you know what? Let's not do the voice.
Okay. Well, speaking of Zwick, we're at the part of our podcast now where we hear the man himself, Ed Zwick, talk about his filming experience. And what you just said there might tie into what you're thinking. Usually this segment takes anywhere from half an hour to 40 minutes at the end of the episode. Well, I don't think it's going to take that long today. Here we go.
On Pawn's Sacrifice, Tobey Maguire and I banged heads at times, but his performance is very special, and we came away good friends. I only wish more people had seen it.
Now, Ed is a gentleman. Like, I've noticed he has this, I noticed throughout the book where it's almost like if he doesn't have anything really bad to say, he won't say anything at all. Or if he does have something glowing to say, he will very much say like Denzel. He glowed about Denzel. He glows about Tom Cruise regarding Last Samurai, and of course, well, Matthew Broderick. Even during that time, he kind of put it more of the onus on the mother. Here he said that yes, he and the main star banged or butted heads throughout the process. So I think we see that on the screen. I think we see a discombobulated performance because you might have an actor who has a role to do. So, he's a professional. I'm going to fulfill the contract. I'm going to do this. But it seems like there might have been, like you said, you saw it on the screen or in the film. There seems to be some sort of disconnect between what we're seeing as a viewer and what we're getting from the actor. So maybe he was doing a performance where Ed was like, you got to tone it down, because Ed will do that. He actually has told his actors, I forget which ones, but he's told them, to rein it in. And maybe he tried to tell that to Tobey, like maybe you're being too whatever. And then I don't know what who knows? He doesn't say. He says they've remained friends. What we've all said is like he felt, I wish more people saw this film. Let's just listen to the next clip here.
Liev Schreiber's performance in it is miraculous too, just as it was in Defiance. If I'm lucky, we'll get to make a third movie together. Although I suspect he might prefer that his whole part not be in Russian.
Okay, that's funny. So he mentions that no more Russian, because Defiance was in Russian as well. So he was speaking Russian in Defiance. So he's doing 2 Russian films in a row with Ed. I thought that was kind of funny. But he said he loved working. So here we go. He just talked about Tobey, didn't have the best experience. He already spoke a lot at length regarding Liev, what he thought of it, kind of like what we've done with today's episode. Like, he didn't repeat everything he already said about the actor on the previous movie, that he had a good time. He wants to work with him again, is what he said. He'd have no problem with that. So
he called the performance miraculous, which to me means something.
Between the 2 leads, Liev killed it. You can almost sense with Liev as no offense to Tobey. I don't know Tobey, but there's something about him. I don't know what it is. I've seen people like filming him. I know you're an actor, but because it comes with the territory, he seems kind of grumpy. I don't know if that's true. Wasn't he part of the Brat Pack with Leonardo DiCaprio?
They had a film that they
they were called the P Patrol, like the P Word Patrol. Weren't they called that when they were young?
I know there was a movie they made together that they went to court over, making sure it was never released.
That's right. I
think you can find it. I think you're able to watch it now.
And I'm not trying to say anything disparaging about, again, there's always a difference between your job and the person. So like at the end of the day, being an actor is just like, sometimes I'm not the best person at my job, but don't rate my whole personality in life because I might suck at my job. Sometimes the job performance and the personality are 2 different things. I don't want to disparage Tobey as a person. He doesn't seem like he acts very much anymore. Have you heard why that might be? Where he's semi-retired or just doesn't care?
He wants money.
More money, or he just has money?
He's got the money. I think he's got the money. But you just keyed in on something that like sort of reminded me.
Sure.
Me and a friend of mine used to have this sort of theory about Mark Wahlberg, because Mark Wahlberg is, I think, a very similar actor. It's an actor that is director dependent, because there's amazing Mark Wahlberg performances. Boogie Nights is one of them, but then there's also atrocious performances. And Tobey Maguire is very similar. He is going to give a performance that is as good as the environment he's in. And that we're doing an Ed Zwick podcast, so I'm not by any means saying that.
No, it's okay.
Ed Zwick is the reason his performance is bad. But
they didn't connect those. So that's the reality.
Exactly. It might also be that Tobey Maguire is made for a certain kind of movie, but at the same time, I'm thinking back to Seabiscuit, and I don't remember any negative thoughts about his performance in Seabiscuit.
I think he's a fine actor in the sense of fine actor. He's like serviceable. I hate to say it like that. He's not horrible, but like I said, the natural question look, I can't control what my brain does. When I'm watching this film, I said to myself, is he a good actor? I don't know. Now I'm questioning.
I definitely think it's more of that Mark Wahlberg syndrome where it's got to be the right role.
Like Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. It's role dependent because how can you make Boogie Nights and then make like the big hit? One's an amazing performance in an amazing movie, and the other is a shit performance in a shit movie. And I think it's probably the same thing with Tobey. Is it's got to be a perfect storm of a great script and a great character, and just all the stars align. Whereas for somebody like Liev Schreiber, it's like I'm going to do my prep work, and that's all it takes. It's not going to be left to the gods to sort of determine whether or not my performance is going to be good.
Well, you're right about Tobey. He's fine financially. He has a net worth of $75 million, so he's doing okay. He doesn't need to work a day in his life, or like more. But speaking of films, so he did at that time Pawn Sacrifice in 2014. Later, he was in the movie The Boss Baby, playing a voice and the narrator in that film. Okay. Then 4 years after that, he does Peter Parker again in No Way Home. So between Pawn Sacrifice, he didn't have live action until he played Spider-Man again. Then a year later, he was in the movie Babylon.
Yeah.
Did you see that one, Babylon?
No, I did not see it.
Yeah, I know. I'm the same.
I've heard great things about it, and I've heard comparisons to Boogie Nights. But sometimes I see the runtime on movies, and I'm like, unless it's a filmmaker that I simply adore.
Like Quentin, I could watch a 4-hour Quentin movie, no problem.
Exactly. But the other thing that I think is interesting that you brought up here is I almost wonder if Pawn Sacrifice killed Tobey Maguire's momentum as a non-Marvel actor.
His screen time since Pawn Sacrifice has been almost zero because, again, voice actor work, supporting role in No Way Home. Babylon, he's like 20th on the credit list. So he's one of the celebrity people or whatever. Like he's not like he's third billed. Like he's like 10th to 15th billed. He probably has like a 5-minute role in a 3-hour film. That's it. That's it, Craig. Like, and nothing on the horizon according to Wikipedia.
I almost wonder if Pawn Sacrifice hurt him more than it helped him.
More like Yawn Sacrifice. All right. Okay, well, I don't know. That might be it. Let's see if there's any more clips here.
Jack Reacher never go.
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
Wow.
We're going to the Jack. Spoiler alert: Jack Reacher's next, and that's the. Speaking of which, you are actually on the next episode of this podcast. If you're still up for that, are you okay with that?
Absolutely. It's a movie I've watched at least twice, so I'll be watching it for a third time for that episode.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I mean, there we go, folks. That is Pawn Sacrifice. 19 million. It made 6 in the box office. I feel bad for Ed because I think this is officially his first kind of bomb, and unfortunately, it might not be his last. I feel kind of bad to see again someone with such a track record of Glory, Legends of the Fall, Last Samurai, The Siege. You know, these big films that did so well, and now it's like, yeah.
I'm going to think of 2 examples here. It's Tarantino saying he wants to retire after his 10th film, whatever that's going to be. And this is because he doesn't want to become the guy that you look back at his career and say, oh man, you know, he started missing his step. And also De Palma has said, and he made a movie back in 2019 by no means is he sort of sticking to this, but De Palma has always said that like after your 50s as a director, it's really hard because it's a demanding job. And De Palma's of the opinion that after you're 50, you really, really have to put in the extra bit of work to really do what you did much easier when you were younger. So
tell it to Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, did you see Juror number 2?
Yes, I have seen that film. Why did I watch it? And I did see it just recently, last like this winter.
It hit Max the other day, so we watched it.
Okay, what did you think?
I just didn't see the point of it.
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah, why? Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Either, what's that line from The Dark Knight? Either you live long enough to see yourself become the villain,
you're
or
the hero.
die a hero.
You're the hero for a while, but if you live long enough or something, you become the villain.
Yeah. It happens. That famous line in Rocky Balboa, right? Where, Mason the Lion Dixon criticized him being older, and he says, "You'll get there."
You'll get there.
I mean, that's a perfect summation of it. It's like, yeah, I'm not who I used to be. But then you've got, guys like Martin Scorsese. He's almost 90 years old. Ridley Scott's in his 80s, and
I know, it's crazy.
Just put out Gladiator 2.
So I think this film overall, I think at the end of the day, what we can say is it looks good. It doesn't look bad. Like, it's a good looking film. It's got a great supporting cast.
And that soundtrack, dude, we didn't talk about a lot of the music, but it was loaded. Soundtrack. I mean, yeah, it didn't look like a cheap film.
The problem started at the top. Not that Ed failed, but he didn't connect with the main actor the way he did with Denzel, the way he did with Leonardo or Tom Cruise. There was a disconnect for whatever reason. They didn't get along. Probably they butted heads. And Edward probably said, "You know what? This film's not worth it. Maybe it's not." And funny enough, David Fincher was looking to direct this at some point. I can almost see that.
I can too. In my head, I can picture David Fincher's Pawn Sacrifice.
When I was watching this film, I knew that trivia, and I was thinking to myself, "This is not a slight on Ed Zwick, but the whole psychological weird drama, Beautiful Mind, schizophrenia, whatever." I could see a David Fincher spin on this. It might have worked a little bit better. But then again, how do we start the action with the final match and then the later life of Bobby? That's a more interesting. And people don't talk about that much, but that actually is the more film, like for watching the film. Yeah, it's about chess, but at the same time, it's not about chess. I forget the guy's name, but they mentioned a real life chess player in the past. Yeah. They could have done this parallel, the same downward spiral that was mentioned in the film is now happening to Bobby and this guy.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, there you go. Pawn Sacrifice, folks. I still recommend seeing it if you're joining us. I know people are actually watching the films, Craig.
Yeah.
That people are watching the films as we talk about them. So if you're doing that, don't not watch this.
Yeah, it's on Tubi, so it's easy enough to watch for free. You just have to, deal with the commercial breaks.
If you're in the States, it's on Tubi. If you're in Canada, it's on a Tubi platform, but it's called Plex, Plex. It's another Tubi-like program. I have Tubi as well, but even Tubi, Craig, has different country agreements. It's weird. So I went to Tubi, wasn't there, but it was on a thing called Plex. I have ad blocker on my PC. I watched it on my PC, so when I watched it on my PC, I don't get ads. That includes Tubi. I don't have ads.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It works. It's just your ad guard. AD guard. It actually works it doesn't work for YouTube anymore. It used to work for YouTube, but YouTube is like, we see it. I pay for YouTube Premium anyways. But
so do I. When I did Swing Shift with Katie on her show,
okay,
I watched it on YouTube, and we have premium, so I'm not used to watching ads on it anymore. And I think on the episode I said to her, I'm like, yeah, it's on YouTube without commercials, and she's like, no, there's commercials. And I was like, oh, okay, I've got premium. Yeah.
Katie, she listens to this podcast. Katie, come on, fork out the money. YouTube, I can't go back. I can't go back.
I got to say that YouTube Premium is 100% worth it.
It is the one thing. If I had to get rid of every single app like one at a time to save money, let's say, thankfully I'm not there. But if I had to get rid of apps one at a time, YouTube Premium would be the last one.
The thing I think a lot of people don't realize is you get YouTube Music as part of your premium subscription. So like,
you don't need iTunes anymore.
What's that? Yeah, you don't need that or Spotify or whatever. And I mean, so for me, it's just like, not having to watch the ads is one thing, but then also you get a music service as well.
When you're on your phone, for example, like when you listen to a podcast on your iTunes app, you can turn off your phone, like your home screen, and walk around with the screen off.
Yeah, YouTube if you don't have premium.
Yeah, it'll stop playing if you do that. But with YouTube Premium, you can turn off. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, okay. You can download stuff too.
Yes, you can download if you want an airplane ride or whatever. Yeah, you can have stuff downloaded on your phone. Okay. All right. Well, Craig, as always, it's an absolute pleasure, but we're not going to have to wait long, folks, because Craig will be back because he also agreed to do Jack Reacher 2, which is going to be an interesting one to talk about regarding Ed Zwick and his journey in these films. Spoiler, he talks less than he did about Pawn Sacrifice with Jack Reacher 2. So you and I are going to have to bring the commentary, not our man, Ed. Okay. So Craig, again, link your stuff and check out Craig's link tree in the show notes. He has a lot of great, wonderful podcasts. And Craig, again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. You're one of my favorite people to sit down behind the microphone with.
Too kind. Thank you, sir.